Once upon a time, at the edge of a vast and whispering forest, there lived a poor woodcutter with his two children, Hansel and Gretel. They were good and clever children who loved their father dearly, but the family was very poor. So poor, in fact, that some days there was hardly bread enough for supper. The children's mother had passed away when they were small, and the woodcutter had taken another wife, a sharp-tongued woman with a heart of stone. She could not bear the sight of hungry mouths or the sound of children's laughter in a house of want. One cold evening, when the cupboard was bare and the fire burned low, the stepmother said bitterly, "Husband, we have nothing left. Tomorrow we must rid ourselves of those children, or we shall all starve. Take them deep into the forest and leave them there." The woodcutter recoiled. How could I abandon my own flesh and blood? But the woman's eyes flashed. "If you will not, then we shall all perish. Do as I say." Long after she had gone to sleep, the woodcutter sat by the dying fire, his head in his hands. He did not know that Hansel and Gretel, lying awake in the next room, had heard every word. Gretel began to weep softly, but Hansel whispered, "Do not cry, little sister. I will think of something." When the moon rose high, Hansel slipped quietly outside. In the silver light, he found small, smooth, white pebbles scattered by the path. He filled his pockets with them and crept back to bed. "Sleep now," he said. "Tomorrow, no matter what happens, we shall find our way home." At dawn, the cruel woman woke them. "Get up, lazybones! You're coming to help your father gather wood." She handed each of them a tiny crust of bread for breakfast. Hansel tucked his in his pocket. As they walked, he dropped one pebble after another upon the path. The morning sun caught the stones, and they glittered like stars on the forest floor. At last, they reached the heart of the forest, where the trees grew tall and thick. The woodcutter lit a small fire. "Stay here, my dears," he said with a trembling voice. "I will go and cut wood nearby." But though the children waited and waited, no sound of his axe returned. When night fell and the fire burned low, Gretel shivered. "Hansel, I think father is gone." "Do not fear," Hansel said, smiling. "Wait for the moon." When the moon rose, the pebbles gleamed bright as silver. Hand in hand, the children followed their shining trail all the way home. They knocked softly at the door. Their father opened it and wept for joy, but their stepmother scowled. "Wretches!" she cried. "Where have you been?" And though she pretended kindness, her heart grew harder still. Long after that, famine returned. Once again the larder stood empty. That night, the stepmother whispered her plan anew. "Husband, you fool! The first time failed, but tomorrow you must take them deeper into the forest where they will never find their way back." The poor man pleaded, but she gave him no peace until he agreed. Hansel and Gretel heard her cruel words once more. When the moon rose, Hansel hurried outside to gather pebbles, but this time the door had been locked. "Do not weep, Gretel," he whispered. "Tomorrow I shall drop crumbs of bread instead. They will guide us home as before." At dawn they set out again. Hansel broke his crust of bread and scattered crumbs along the path. Deeper and deeper they went until they reached a glade thick with ancient trees. Once again, the woodcutter left them with a fire, and once again he did not return. When night fell, Gretel cried, "Now, Hansel, show me the way with your crumbs." But when they looked, the crumbs were gone, every one, eaten by birds. Hansel took his sister's hand. "We will find the way somehow." Through the long night they wandered, but the forest was vast, and the trees whispered strange things in the wind. For 3 days they wandered, hungry and weak. At last, as dawn broke on the fourth morning, a sweet smell drifted through the air. Sweet and spice, warm and inviting. Following the scent, they came upon a clearing where stood the most astonishing cottage in the world. Its walls were made of gingerbread, its roof of cake, its windows of clear sugar, and its fence of candied almonds. "Oh, Hansel," cried Gretel, her eyes wide, "a house we can eat!" The children broke off pieces greedily. Hansel tasted the wall. Gingerbread. Gretel nibbled a sugar pane. "And this window tastes like honey." As they ate, a soft voice called from within. "Nibble, nibble, little mouse, who is nibbling at my house?" Startled, they answered, "It is only the wind." But the door creaked open, and out stepped a bent old woman leaning on a cane. Her hair was white as frost, her eyes bright as beads. "Well, well," she said sweetly, "what lovely children! Come in, dears, you must be starving. I have plenty inside." Too weary to resist, Hansel and Gretel followed her in. The table was spread with milk, fruit, nuts, and cakes. The children ate until they could eat no more, then curled up on soft feather beds and fell fast asleep. When the children awoke, the old woman was gone. In her place stood a terrible witch with eyes that burned red and a laugh that made their hearts tremble. She seized Hansel by the collar and dragged him to a small cage of iron. "You, boy, shall grow fat, and then I will feast upon you." She turned to Gretel. "And you, little wretch, will do the cooking. Fetch water, knead dough, and see that your brother is well fed. If you disobey, you shall taste my oven before he does." From that day, Gretel served the witch in fear. Each morning, the witch hissed, "Hansel, hold out your finger that I may feel how plump you are." But clever Hansel poked out a thin chicken bone instead. The witch's eyes were too dim to see, and she grumbled, "Still too skinny. Eat more." Weeks passed, and Hansel grew no fatter. The witch grew impatient. "Tomorrow I shall eat him, plump or not," she snarled. "Now, girl, heat the oven." Gretel's heart pounded. She dared not disobey, yet she could not let her brother die. The witch ordered her to crawl inside and see whether the oven was hot enough. "But, grandmother," she said timidly, "I do not know how to tell." "Simpleton," screeched the witch, "look inside like this." She leaned forward, opening the iron door wide. Quick as lightning, Gretel gave her a great shove and slammed the door behind her. The witch shrieked, but Gretel held fast until the cries fell silent and the fire burned low. Then she ran to Hansel's cage, sobbing with relief. "Hansel, we are free!" She opened the latch, and he sprang out, embracing her. Together, they searched the witch's house and found chests filled with gold and jewels. "These will buy us bread forever," said Hansel. They packed the treasure into baskets and hurried from the terrible place, guided by the light of dawn. For many days they wandered, crossing rivers and forests, until at last they came to a small clearing they knew well. Ahead stood their father's cottage. When he saw them, the woodcutter ran forward with tears in his eyes. "My children, my dear children!" he cried. He told them their cruel stepmother had fallen ill and died soon after their disappearance. Hansel poured out the gems upon the table, and the house glimmered with light. "Father," said Gretel, "we shall never know hunger again." The woodcutter embraced them both. "You are the joy of my heart," he said. And from that day forth, they lived together in peace and plenty, never again fearing the dark forest or the cruel hunger that had once haunted their dreams. Years later, people still spoke of the brave children who had outwitted the witch of the gingerbread house. Hansel grew into a strong, kind man, and Gretel became wise and gentle. And when the moon rose over the forest, its silver light gleamed upon a narrow path of white pebbles, a path that led safely home.